Hey, what's up everyone? Shane here with ROA Off-Road. Today I'm going to be doing a campfire rant. This is going to be more of an educational piece, and I want to talk a little bit about solar, battery, and how I used to camp where I needed a generator pretty much 24/7 for anything that I really wanted to do. And so we're going to walk around the trailer, and I want to point out some stuff for you as we do. Now, first off, we're out in the wilderness right now, pretty cool, in the desert. We have a pause, which has a massive solar array and a massive battery bank. We also have another trailer that we brought here. Supposedly it's an off-road trailer, American-made trailer, Jayco. It also has some solar and some batteries, but other than that, it's pretty much not able to be off-grid without a generator at all. Now, I've used a lot of RVs over the year, and essentially, I needed a generator for anything. You want to run a microwave? You need a generator. You want to run a television? You need a generator. You want to plug in your laptop? You need a generator. Pretty much think about anything in your house that you want to use, you need a generator. That's standard for pretty much all trailers made in America. The Pause, on the other hand, has a battery bank that is massive. It's 1,080 amps of battery. That's about 12,000 watts of power. So the difference between amps and powers is kind of like miles or kilometers. So don't let it confuse you. Sometimes people really have a hard time figuring out, wait, what's watts? What's you know, if you have a television at your house and you look down the back of it, there's going to be a little, serial code and a lot of little specs on it. Somewhere on the back of that, it's going to say how many amps or watts it consumes. And if it says like 2 amps, it might be 40 watts, something like that. That's kind of a standard TV. What that means is if it says, say, 2 amps or 3 amps, that's per hour. That means you can turn the TV on for an entire hour and it will use 2 or 3 amps or 40 watts, whatever. Now, we have over 10,000 watts of battery, or 1,000 amps. So don't want to get too technical and confusing, but that's kind of, the basics of it. So essentially what that means is you turn on your TV. If it takes 3 amps per hour, you do 3 divided by 1,000 amps. And at that point, your batteries will be totally dead. Now, a lot of people are like, wow, that's amazing. So I should be able to run a TV forever. And especially if you have solar, that means your TV should run indefinitely off-grid, which is probably true. That's actually probably true. Now, guess what? An air conditioning, guess how many amps that uses? Gonna use anywhere from 80 to 100 amps, which means 100 amps. If we have 1,000 amps, how long is the air conditioner gonna run? Let's do that math, about 10 hours. You got roughly about a 10 to 12 hour run time if you're running the air conditioner on full blast off of the batteries. So people, they have this expectation, I can go off grid forever because this is a massive battery bank. And it is a massive battery bank. This thing has more batteries than almost any trailer on the market. Like ROA Off-Road is now carrying 3 different trailers in its lineup, the Imperials, the Roamer 1s, and the Pauses, and the X. And honestly, they have the largest, I think the Brooder might have a similar battery bank as us, but we literally have the largest battery banks out of any trailer in the industry. But even though we have a large battery bank, does not mean you can go off grid forever without having to plug in or run a generator. When you start running refrigerators, TVs, microwaves, plugging in computers, say you have fancy cameras, they require lithium batteries, everything takes a lot more power. Think of like memory cards, right? Back in the olden days, you get a little memory card that had 32 megabytes and it felt like a lot. Nowadays, that's like a joke. People have little teeny cards that have gigs, like 32 gigabytes, and you still run out of space because the cameras take so much more space. It's the same thing. Nowadays, lithium batteries, they take a lot to charge, right? So if you're gonna be plugging in cameras with lithium batteries, they're gonna drain your batteries a lot faster, and it's not, so it's kind of relevant to like what you're using nowadays. Yeah, TVs are more efficient, but there's other things that consume a lot of power, especially air conditioning units. Now, expectations to have when you go camping in any of our trailers. Honestly, if you're trying to run the air conditioner, nonstop, you absolutely need to have a generator or potentially plug it in somewhere. ACs just right now are not the most practical things to run. This is with a caveat if you're somewhere that it's 100 degrees all day long, right? If you go somewhere where, you know, it gets 100 degrees for 2 hours and then at night it cools down to 60, 70 degrees, well, you won't run the air conditioner. You'll turn the air conditioner off the night, open the windows and let the fan cool you off, right? But if you're somewhere like in Texas and it's humid, 80, 90 degrees at night, 100 and something degrees during the day, you just won't be able to run the AC through the night, through the day, without getting a generator or without being plugged in. So that's an expectation to have. But now, can you run most everything else? Yeah, the solar array on the roof right now, 600 to 700 watts. There's some new options where they're even putting more solar than that. You also have solar plugs on the outside over here where you can put in a briefcase and have an additional 600. You can have 12 to 1400 watts of solar. And what does that mean? Watts. Think about it. So remember, I said a battery, 100 amp hour battery, is kind of equivalent to around 12 or 1300 watts. That means if you have a 1200 watt solar array, and in perfect conditions, it was to capture 1200 watts, that means you could charge one battery in 1 hour. Now, unfortunately, perfect conditions don't exist on planet Earth, which means usually if you get 50%, you should be pretty happy. 60, 70%, you should be thrilled. But that 70 or so percent is going to be at noonday with the sun beating right down on your trailer, which means the second the sun goes over your trailer, you no longer are even getting, you know, you're not going to get 100, you're not even going to get 70, it's going to drop probably 10%. And every time the sun moves another hour, it's going to continually drop. So, you know, from the sun up to sundown, you typically might not put in barely, you might put in a couple 100 amps on a nice summer day with the sun hitting you all day long. But if you run your AC for 2 hours, essentially the solar might run it for 2 or 3 hours. And then at that point, you're going to start dipping into your battery bank. So a lot of people really have a hard time understanding, wrapping their head around, like, how long can they go off grid? How long can they run things? Now, let me give you a quick comparison. Right here, you can literally run your air conditioner for 10 hours on 1080 amps of lithium, battle-born. That's very doable, right? But you got to keep in mind, you'll be dead. And at that point, you got to charge it back up. And that could take you 10 hours to charge it back to full. But you can run it for 10 hours. A television, you know, or lights in there, you could run a week without even worrying about it. The solar would keep it charged. You could be plugging in things and charging. Now come over here and let me tell you, I pointed out this trailer earlier. How long could you run the air conditioner on this little guy here? You could run it precisely 0 hours off of your batteries because it's not set up to run. It doesn't have an inverter. You would have to have a generator. So you might be thinking, man, I can only run my AC for 10 hours. Well, this one you can run it for 0 hours. You can plug it in and you can run it as long as you want, but you can plug the pods in and run it as long as you want as well. How long can you run the television? Precisely 0 hours. Once again, unless you have an inverter, you can't run anything off-grid on this besides your lights and your refrigerator because they work off a battery. Now, if you want to upgrade in the future and get an inverter so you can run the TV off-grid, you could probably run it off of one of these batteries for maybe 5 to 8 hours. And like I said, you could probably run that for weeks, you know, so huge difference. When you're looking at a standard American trailer, people don't quite understand or comprehend truly that our off-road trailers have battery banks, battery arrays, and solar arrays that are just like, really, you can't even compare it to a standard cheap American-made trailer because they're just night and day with what you can do. So there you have it. Hopefully you learned something. I know that can be sometimes overwhelming or confusing for people. A lot of people really get frustrated because they just are like, I don't understand. I thought I could run things forever. And it's like, no, you really can't, right? Like, some things take huge amount of power, like blow dryers, microwaves, air conditioners. Those types of things can take, you know, over 1,000 watts or 100 amps per hour, right? So you don't have an unlimited amount of time to run things. Starlink is another good one that a lot of people don't know. Starlink can take 6 or 7 amps per hour. And if you run that 24/7, you're running 100, over 100 to 200 amps per day. So when you're sleeping at night, unplug your Starlink. Otherwise, you're going to just be unnecessarily draining your batteries. The idea is conserve your energy. Solar will work your trailer's batteries back up, ideally in the summer, but it doesn't give you the ability to stay off grid forever as long as you want. So make any comments, ask any questions below. We will reply to your questions if you have some good questions. If there's something you want to know and we can teach you, we'd love to do that too. So make the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful night.